Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.
From the St. Louis Public Radio Newsroom, this is The Gateway. It's Monday, March 25th. I'm Jonathan Ahl. Missouri lawmakers returned to Jefferson City today for a second half of session after a week off. One of the big priorities for Republicans is passing a resolution that, if later approved by voters, would make it harder to amend the state's constitution.
Right now, it's in the House. It could get changed, which if that is the case, then it has to go back to the Senate. But right now, it did make it through one chamber.
St. Louis Public Radio's Sarah Kellogg gives an update on the 2024 Missouri legislative session that's coming up on the Gateway. The total eclipse of the sun happening April 8th is set to bring tens of thousands of visitors to Midwestern towns in its path. As St. Louis Public Radio's Eric Schmid reports, these communities are eager to see the economic boost.
Carbondale, Illinois is in the path of the eclipse this year. That was true in 2017 as well. Stephen Mitchell directs economic development for the city.
Carbondale has won the celestial lottery.
He says the eclipse 7 years ago brought in about $8 million of economic impact. Mitchell says that translated to big business for restaurants that are staples in the Carbondale community.
Each and every one of them said, I had the single biggest day of my entire restaurant career over decades that one day.
Mitchell says the city expects to see tens of thousands of guests, like it did in 2017. He says they're prepared so they can capture every dollar that comes into the town for the eclipse this year. I'm Eric Schmid, St. Louis Public Radio.
Google is building a $1 billion data center in Kansas City, which will help run all of the tech company's apps and services, including cloud and AI. The development includes a skilled trades and readiness program that will begin next year. Matt Sexton, a spokesperson for Google, says the center will employ more than 1,200 workers during construction and about 100 people once it's up and running.
Kansas City has so many factors in its favor, particularly for a project like this, including, available land and a talented workforce.
Google also donated $100,000 to North Kansas City School District. The company does not currently have a timeline to finish construction. A new report indicates farmers in Missouri and Illinois will make the smallest profit since 2020. As St. Louis Public Radio's Lauren Brennecke reports, it could mean consumers pay less at the grocery store.
Agricultural economists from the University of Missouri predict droughts, commercial farms, and interest rates will cause small farmers to make less. Pat Westhoff is the director of Mizzou's Food and Agriculture Policy Research Institute. He says consumers might spend less on food as small farmers compete with high-yield corporate producers.
We expect to see lower commodity prices in years ahead. That probably means a tighter farm income picture for farmers, so that's a concern, of course. At the same time, we're probably looking at lower food price inflation for consumers.
This means that prices will fall for products like eggs and pork. Livestock shortages could mean higher profit for ranchers and continued price increases for consumers. I'm Lauren Brennecke, St. Louis Public Radio.
A federal judge is invoking Dr. Seuss to tell former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich to go away. Dave McKinney has more.
In 2021, Illinois' impeached and felonious ex-governor sued the state and legislature in federal court. He demanded a judge undo the ban the legislature placed on him running for public office again on grounds it violated voters' First Amendment rights. Federal Judge Stephen Seeger tossed Blagojevich's lawsuit, but not before heaping on a good dose of ridicule. Seeger says it's not the federal court's job to undo the legislature's impeachment and conviction of Blagojevich, and Seeger ends his colorful opinion by directing the words of Dr. Seuss's Marvin K. Mooney, "Will you please go now?" at Blagojevich. Seeger writes, "The time has come. The time is now. Just go. 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 I don't care how." This is Dave McKinney.
The 2024 Missouri legislative session resumes today after a week away from the Capitol. With only 2 months left until the end of session, St. Louis Public Radio's Brian Moline spoke with State House reporter Sarah Kellogg about what legislators have accomplished so far and what still needs to pass.
Well, Sarah, we're about midway through this year's legislative session. How do you think it's gone so far?
This session has been really interesting. I think that there was some trepidation about it being an election year and that causing things to maybe slow down. I don't think that's been an incorrect assumption. I think it was marked really early on in the Senate by just complete standstill of operations due to fissions between the Senate Republican leadership and the newly established Freedom Caucus. That pretty much stopped anything from happening for almost about a month. But I think since it's kind of mellowed on the Senate side and they have been able to get more things done as we did approach spring break, the House side, I really haven't noticed too many fissions. I think it's been more or less business as usual, but it's not as easy to spot in the House as it is in the Senate.
One of the things the Freedom Caucus wanted was a resolution that would make it harder to amend Missouri's constitution. Where does that stand right now?
Yes, that was a big reason why there was so much tension in the beginning of the year. And right now, that resolution is in the House. They did manage to pass it in the Senate. The only question on the proposed ballot measure would be, should it be both a simple majority and a majority of the Missouri's congressional districts in order to pass a constitutional amendment through the initiative petition process? But there is a lot of ballot candy that was stripped off of that Senate version. And there was a little bit of tension last week in the Senate because the sponsor, Senator Mary Elizabeth Coleman, pretty much asked the House to put that language back on, which angered Senate Democrats. But right now, it's in the House. It could get changed, which if that is the case, then it has to go back to the Senate. But right now, it did make it through one chamber.
Right before they went on spring break, the Senate did pass a really big education package. Can you tell us a bit about what's inside that bill?
Yeah, this is an over 150-page bill. It started out a lot smaller than that, but it ballooned to this. And it includes not only quite a few things that Republicans won, but also some things Senate Democrats wanted, which is why they ultimately kind of let the bill go through. And it includes an expansion of charter schools just to Boone County, which is the Columbia area. It also includes a growth of the state's K through 12 tax credit scholarship program. So it expands that. So those are two things that Republicans really wanted. But other things that, Republicans were amenable to, that's why they're in the bill, also includes basically raising teacher pay, not only through kind of an optional program, but statutorily. So it would make the minimum teacher pay $40,000 in the state. It also includes changes to the school funding formula. So right now it's based off of attendance, and this would eventually change. So it's 50% attendance and 50% enrollment. So that's it would actually give more money to schools. So there's a lot of things that both parties kind of wanted in this bill, and ultimately it's on its way to the House.
What are some other possible priorities for the House and Senate going into the second half of session?
Other than the initiative petition resolution, which I do think is going to get a pretty big spotlight in the House come in a couple weeks, I think that the education bill, the big education package the Senate passed is one. Public safety has been pretty much a big emphasis area for Republicans recently. Each chamber has passed their own version of like this big public safety omnibus bill, which includes, criminalizing celebratory gunfire, putting a penalty on that so you just can't shoot your gun, straight up in the air on the 4th of July or on New Year's. It also heightens penalties for injuring police dogs. So there's like a big omnibus bill on that front that has both, passed both chambers. So I think that's probably going to it made it all the way last year, but ultimately got vetoed. So I wouldn't be surprised if it made it all the way again. Those are just a couple things that I think are on the horizon with only about 8 weeks left.
Sarah Kellogg, St. Louis Public Radio's State House and Politics reporter. Sarah, thanks for the update. We look forward to hearing all your coverage in the second half of session.
Thanks so much.
That was St. Louis Public Radio's Brian Moline speaking with our State House reporter, Sarah Kellogg. The Gateway is a production of St. Louis Public Radio, a member-supported service of the University of Missouri, St. Louis. Music by Ryan McNeely of Adult Verb. I'm Jonathan Ahl, and from the St. Louis Public Radio Newsroom, this has been The Gateway.
Support comes from Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to sustainable and sound conservation of the state's forests, which support more than 41,000 Missouri jobs, resulting in a $10 billion industry. ChooseWood.com.